It was Father's Day, and I arrived at my daughter's house carrying my grandfather's pocket watch. I knocked on the door with a smile, excited to give her this family heirloom that had been passed down for 3 generations. But when the door opened, Stephanie's eyes were cold, like she was annoyed I even showed up. "Oh, it's you, Dad," she said flatly, not even looking at the gift box in my hand. "My name is Victor Reynolds, and I'm 58 years old. I spent 20 years in the Navy, then another 20 as a construction engineer before retiring last year. That Father's Day changed everything between me and my daughter. I had spent $275 on restoring that pocket watch, money I really couldn't spare from my pension. But it was my grandfather's watch, the one he carried through World War II. I thought Stephanie would treasure it the way I always had. I stepped inside her mansion, the one I helped buy with a $45,000 down payment 4 years ago. 3 stories in the best part of town, complete with a pool and 3-car garage. I had mortgaged my own house to help her get that loan. "Happy Father's Day, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "I brought you something special that belonged to your grandfather." Stephanie sighed like my presence was some kind of burden. "Just put it on the counter, Dad. I'm finishing up a client call." I walked into the marble kitchen, part of the renovation I paid $8,500 for, and set the watch box down carefully. Through the window, I could see my grandson Noah splashing in the pool with his friends. The kid was 10 years old and barely acknowledged me anymore. I stood there for 20 minutes, listening to Stephanie talk business on her phone. She was a corporate lawyer, making good money, but somehow there was always another emergency that needed my help. Just last month, it was $4,200 for some investment opportunity her husband Troy was pushing. When she finally came into the kitchen, she looked perfect as always. Designer clothes, fresh manicure, everything paid for with the loans I'd given her over the years that never got repaid. "So, Dad, are you staying for dinner, or just dropping off whatever that is?" Her tone was ice cold. I swallowed hard. "I thought maybe we could spend some time together. It's been 6 weeks since I've seen you." She rolled her eyes and finally looked directly at me. That look made my blood freeze. It wasn't love or even annoyance. It was pure disdain. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen island. "Sit down." I sat down, my heart already sinking. I knew that tone from when she was little, right before she'd say something that would cut deep. "I've been thinking about Father's Day, about my life, and what would really make me happy," she began. "Of course, honey. Tell me. Maybe I can help." She set down her coffee cup and stared straight at me with eyes that had gone completely cold. What came next hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "Dad, you're pathetic, always needing to feel important, always inserting yourself where you don't belong. You want to know what would make me happiest for Father's Day? Just disappear from our lives forever. Stop being this needy, clingy burden that I have to carry around." The words didn't just hurt. They destroyed something inside me. 20 years of being a single father after my wife died. 20 years of working double shifts to pay for her college, her law school, her wedding, her house. $165,000 total when I added it all up later. "Stephanie," I said, my voice shaking, "I'm your father. I sacrificed everything for you after Mom died. And that's exactly the problem," she snapped, standing up. "You made me your whole world, and now I can't breathe. You think your sacrifices give you the right to control my life? They don't. They just make you pathetic." The word pathetic echoed in my head like a gunshot. This was my daughter, the little girl I'd raised alone from age 12, the one I'd stayed up all night with when she had nightmares about her mother, the one I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college. "But, honey, I just want to be part of your life, part of Noah's life. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Your constant need to be involved is exhausting. You're like a sad old man who can't accept that his usefulness is over. Take care of yourself for once and leave us alone." I stood up, my legs shaking so badly I could barely stay upright. I grabbed my keys and left the watch behind, hoping at least Noah might appreciate it someday. "I can't believe you'd say this after everything I've done for you," I managed to whisper. She actually smirked at that. "Everything you did was just to make yourself feel needed. But guess what, Dad? We don't need you anymore. We haven't needed you for years." I walked toward the door, each step feeling like it aged me 10 years. Before leaving, I turned back one last time. There was no regret in her eyes, just impatience for me to disappear. "Happy Father's Day." "Stephanie," I whispered, closing the door behind me. What she didn't know was that her words had awakened something in me that had been sleeping for decades. Not anger exactly, but crystal clear thinking. I got home to my small two-bedroom house and sat on the couch where I used to read bedtime stories to Stephanie after her mother died. Her words kept echoing. "You're pathetic. Your usefulness is over." But this time, instead of just feeling hurt, something else was happening. I was getting angry, really angry. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about every sacrifice I'd made. When Stephanie was 15 and her mother died of cancer, I could have remarried. Hell, I'd been dating Sarah, a nice nurse who understood my situation. But Stephanie had cried and begged me not to bring another woman into our lives. So I stayed single, focused everything on raising her right. When Stephanie was in college and changed majors twice, I paid the extra tuition without complaint. About $31,000. Total. When she graduated law school and needed a car for interviews, I took out a loan for $12,000. When she married her first husband, I paid for the wedding. $22,000 for 200 guests. When that marriage failed and she met Troy, I helped with the down payment on their dream house. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out every receipt, every loan document, every bank statement. I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator and added it up. $165,000. That's what I had spent on my daughter's happiness over 20 years. And it led to her calling me pathetic on Father's Day. But as I stared at those numbers, something clicked. For 20 years, I had been manipulated by someone who saw my love as weakness, not as a sacred bond between father and daughter. If I had invested that $165,000 in my own retirement, my own happiness, my own future, I'd be sitting pretty right now. Instead, I was living in a small house, stretching my pension, and being told my usefulness was over. At 6 a.m. the next morning, I picked up my phone and did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I blocked Stephanie's number. Then I blocked Troy's number and every contact connected to their family. It was a small act, but it felt like taking back control of my own life for the first time in decades. I showered, put on my best suit, and headed to the bank. Stephanie and I had a joint emergency account that I'd been putting money into for years, just in case she needed it. That account had $5,800 in it, money that was supposed to be for her emergencies, but really it was just another way for her to access my finances whenever she wanted. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," said the bank manager, a guy I'd known for 15 years. "What can I do for you today?" "I'd like to close joint account number 4462789, I said calmly. "Transfer everything to my personal account." He looked surprised. "Are you sure? That's quite a bit of money in there." "Absolutely sure." I signed the papers without hesitation. "And I want it done today." Watching that $5,800 come back to me gave me a feeling I hadn't experienced in decades. Power, control over my own money for once. But I was just getting started. My next stop was the mortgage office. When Stephanie and Troy bought their house, I didn't just give them the down payment. I co-signed the loan. My name was on that deed as partial owner, which meant I had legal rights if payments stopped. "Mr. Reynolds," the loan officer smiled when I walked in. "What brings you here today?" "I need to review the mortgage where I'm listed as guarantor," I said. "I want to understand my rights and obligations." She pulled up the file and spread out the documents. "Since you're a co-signer and on the deed, you have options if the primary borrowers fall behind on payments, including the right to protect your financial interest." "And what if they've already missed a payment?" I asked. Her eyebrows went up. "Have they?" What the loan officer didn't know was that Troy had mentioned their money troubles just 2 weeks before Father's Day. He'd lost $15,000 in some cryptocurrency scheme, and they'd missed their May payment. He'd told me casually, probably expecting me to offer help like I always did. "I believe so," I said carefully. "What are my options?" "You can file to protect your ownership interest," she explained. "Essentially force a review of the loan terms or even initiate proceedings to recover your investment." "I'd like to begin that process," I said, signing the documents she put in front of me. When I left that office, I felt like I was walking on air. For 20 years, I'd been the safety net that allowed them to take risks with other people's money. Now, it was time for them to learn what it meant to fly without a net. My next stop was somewhere I hadn't been in years, a travel agency called New Horizons. I'd kept their brochure about retirement communities in Costa Rica hidden in my desk drawer, dreaming about possibilities that always seemed out of reach because I was too busy funding Stephanie's lifestyle. "Good afternoon," the consultant greeted me. "How can I help you?" "I'm interested in your program for American retirees in Costa Rica," I said. "What would it take for a 58-year-old veteran to start fresh down there?" The young woman, Maria, pulled out a thick folder. "With your military pension and savings, you could live very comfortably in Costa Rica. The veteran community there is strong, and the cost of living is about 40% less than the U.S. What about starting a business? Many retirees do that. Fishing charters are popular with Americans. You could probably start one for under $25,000. As she talked, I realized I was actually excited about something for the first time in years. Not excited about helping someone else or solving someone else's problems, but excited about my own future. "I'd like to book a trip to look around," I said. "When's the earliest I can?" "Leave. How about next week?" she said. "I can arrange everything." I walked out of that agency with a one-way ticket to San Jose and a heart that felt lighter than it had in 20 years. The next few days were like waking up from a 20-year coma. I was finally making decisions based on what I wanted, not what Stephanie needed. And let me tell you, it felt incredible. On Tuesday, my phone started buzzing constantly. Even though I'd blocked Stephanie's number, she was calling from different phones. Troy's, her office, probably borrowed from friends. I let every single call go to voicemail. After an hour of silence, I listened to them. The first message was confused. "Dad, I can't reach you. Call me back." The second was annoyed. "Dad, this is ridiculous. Whatever game you're playing, stop it." The third was panicked. "Dad," the mortgage company called. "They want to discuss our loan. What did you do?" By the fifth message, she was practically screaming. "Dad, you can't just disappear. We need to talk about this." I deleted every single message without responding. For the first time in 20 years, Stephanie's crisis was not my emergency. On Wednesday, my neighbor Gary stopped by. He's a good guy, retired firefighter, who'd watched me sacrifice everything for Stephanie over the years. We'd had plenty of conversations about ungrateful kids over beers in my backyard. "Vic," he said, settling into my living room with a coffee, "you look different. What's going on?" I told him everything, every cruel word from Father's Day, every detail of my plan to disappear. When I finished, Gary was quiet for a long moment, then shook his head. "Jesus, Vic, after everything you did for that girl, raised her alone, paid for everything, and she calls you pathetic?" "The worst part," I said, "is that she said it like it was nothing, like I was some old piece of furniture she needed to throw away. So, you're really moving to Costa Rica?" "I already bought the ticket," I said, showing him my phone. "I leave Monday." Gary squeezed my shoulder. "Good for you, brother. That girl needs to learn what it's like to stand on her own 2 feet. But won't you miss your grandson?" That hit me hard. Noah was the one innocent person in all this mess. "Yeah, I will. But staying would just teach him it's okay to treat people like garbage if they love you enough." Gary nodded slowly. "You know what? You're right. Maybe this is the lesson that whole family needs." I asked Gary to help with one special detail. I wanted Stephanie to think I'd vanished completely, at least for a while. Gary would check on my house Thursday evening and discover the letter I'd leave behind. "I'll make it look good," Gary said with a grin. 2 days of calling you, getting worried, using my spare key to check on you. That night, I wrote the most important letter of my life. I wrote and rewrote it for hours, making sure every word would hit home like a sledgehammer. "My dear daughter," I began. "You said I was pathetic and that my usefulness was over. You told me to disappear from your lives forever. I've decided to grant that wish. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Starting the life I should have lived years ago, instead of pouring everything into an ungrateful child." I wrote for pages, listing every dollar, every sacrifice, every missed opportunity I'd given up for her. I included copies of every receipt, every loan document, every bank statement. "Attached to this letter are the legal documents I signed this week," I continued. "Notice that I'm exercising my rights as guarantor on your house due to your missed payment. I've also closed our joint account and terminated the insurance policies I've been paying for your family. I detailed every change that would unfold in her life now that her personal ATM was closed. No more emergency money, no more safety net. No more pathetic old dad to bail her out. You wanted me to disappear, I wrote. Congratulations. Your life will definitely be lighter without me, but it will also be much more expensive. I hope you think it was worth it every time you have to solve your own problems with your own money. The letter was 8 pages long. I signed it simply, Your pathetic father, who finally learned his worth. Thursday morning, while I was packing 2 suitcases with everything I owned that mattered, there was a loud banging on my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Troy standing there, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Victor, he began, his voice desperate. Stephanie told me what happened between you two. Look, what she said was awful, unforgivable even. But please don't destroy our family over it. Destroy your family? I asked, genuinely puzzled. I'm just respecting her wishes. She wanted me to disappear. The bank said you're forcing them to review our mortgage because we missed one payment. Come on, Victor. It was just 1 month. 1 month that you didn't think to mention when. You asked me for $4,200 2 weeks ago, I said calmly. You know, for that sure thing investment that was gonna make you rich. Troy looked down. There was no defense for that. Please, he begged, give me a chance to fix this. I'll make Stephanie apologize. I almost laughed. Troy, you can't force someone to feel remorse. She showed me exactly who she really is, and I finally listened. But the house, Victor. We'll lose everything. No, I corrected him. You'll lose everything I paid for. There's a difference. What about Noah? He loves his grandfather. That one hurt, but I'd already thought it through. Noah will learn a valuable lesson about how actions have consequences. Maybe that'll make him a better man than his mother is a woman. Troy's face crumpled. Please, Victor, I'm begging you. It's too late for begging, I said, slowly closing the door. Tell Noah I love him. And maybe someday when he's older, he'll understand why his grandfather had to teach his mother about respect. Friday was my last day in the city where I'd spent my entire adult life. I walked through places that held memories. The naval base where I'd served, the construction sites I'd managed, the park where I used to take Stephanie when she was little. It was a quiet goodbye to a life lived entirely for someone else. Saturday morning, Gary knocked carrying coffee and wearing a big grin. Ready for the great escape, Vic? More than ready, I said, wheeling my suitcases to the door. I've got your spare keys and the letter for Stephanie, Gary said. Don't worry, I'll make it look good. 2 days of calling you, getting worried, using the spare key to check on you, and finding the place empty. Remember, I said as the taxi pulled up, you have to look genuinely concerned. Say you tried calling for 48 hours, got no answer, then found my letter on the kitchen table. Vic, Gary laughed. I was in theater in high school. This'll be the performance of my lifetime. As the taxi drove toward the airport, I looked back at my small house one last time. Funny thing was, I felt no regret. It was like I'd finally escaped from a prison I'd built for myself. The flight to Costa Rica took 9 hours. No one could call asking for money or favors. During that long flight, I wrote in my journal about everything that had happened. For the first time in 20 years, I was doing something purely for myself. When I landed in San Jose, a young guy from the retirement agency was waiting with a sign. His name was Carlos Martinez, friendly with a warm smile that reminded me why I'd chosen this path. Mr. Victor, he said, welcome to Costa Rica. Ready for your new chapter? More than ready, I replied, and I meant it completely. Carlos drove me to a small but beautiful house near the beach in Manuel Antonio, rented by the agency while I decided whether to stay permanently. It had a porch overlooking the Pacific Ocean and a workshop perfect for the woodworking I'd always wanted to try. Here's everything. About the area, Carlos said, handing me a folder. Fishing charters, veteran groups, Spanish classes, and business opportunities. I also set up your meeting with a financial advisor for Wednesday. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a walk with no destination, no schedule, no one depending on me. I wandered along the beach, watching pelicans and fishing boats, until I found a small restaurant where I ordered fresh fish and a beer. As I ate, I calculated what I'd spent on Stephanie in just the last 3 years. The house payment help, the car repairs, the emergency loans, Troy's failed investments, at least $47,000. That money could have bought me a nice place here outright. It was 7 p.m. in Costa Rica, 9 p.m. back home. Gary was probably delivering my letter to Stephanie right about now. At 11 p.m., my phone started buzzing constantly. I'd unblocked it just to see what would happen. Stephanie calling over and over. I let it ring, then turned it off. I needed one. Quiet night to enjoy my freedom. The next morning, I finally answered. "Dad!" she screamed into the phone. "Where are you? Gary came over with your letter saying you disappeared. What the hell is wrong with you?" "Hello, Stephanie," I said calmly, looking out at the blue Pacific. "Did you read the letter?" "I did." "Are you insane? How could you do this to us? I'm doing exactly what you asked for. You said I was pathetic and told me to disappear from your lives forever. Mission accomplished." "I didn't mean it. I was just stressed about money and took it out on you. Same old tactic. Make it my fault for reacting to her cruelty. Stephanie, for 20 years I lived for you. I gave up everything. My money, my dreams, my future. And when I needed just a little respect and gratitude, you called me pathetic and told me my usefulness was over. Where are you? Please come home. We need you. How interesting." Now she needed me. After reading my letter and realizing all her financial benefits were gone. "Do you need me or do you need my money?" I asked bluntly. Long silence. Then, "I need you, Dad. I really do." But her voice wavered. We both knew the truth. "Stephanie, those words you said destroyed something in me that can't be fixed. You showed me exactly how you really see me. I'm sorry, I really am. Sorry isn't enough. The damage is done. You know what? Maybe those words were the best thing you ever said to me, because they woke me up." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm finally living for myself, and it feels incredible." 3 weeks later, I was deep into my new life. I'd joined a woodworking group, signed up for Spanish classes, and was learning to run fishing charters with other American expats. My savings weren't just stable, they were growing. The bank had processed my claim on Stephanie's house. Since I was the guarantor and they'd defaulted, I recovered my original $45,000 plus interest. Total, $52,000 back in my pocket. I used that money to buy a small beachfront property and start a fishing guide business. Within 6 months, I was booked solid with tourists and making more money than my pension ever provided. A year later, I received one final email from Stephanie. She'd lost the house, moved to a small apartment, and Troy was working a regular job instead of chasing get-rich-quick schemes. "Dad," she wrote, "I finally understand what I lost when I lost you. Not just the money, but the one person who loved me unconditionally. I hope you're happy because you deserve it." I kept her words in my heart, not as victory, but as confirmation that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Now, 2 years later, I sit on my porch watching the sunset over the Pacific. I own a successful business, have genuine friends, and more money in the bank than I've ever had. Most importantly, I have my self-respect back. Stephanie once said my usefulness was over and told me to disappear forever. She was right about one thing. It was the best gift ever, just not in the way she expected. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who take you for granted, even when that person is your own child. And sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up teaching us the most valuable lesson, that we're worth more than we ever believed. Real love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until there's nothing left. It means having enough respect for yourself to demand respect from others. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time, even if it breaks your heart.